thing. All right. There I am. Okay. Love it when I'm here. I will call to order the March 17th, 2016 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Wolf. Here. Farr. Here. Bennett. Here. Lizalde. Here. Mosby. Here. Bactino. Here. White.
Here.
And Chair Adam.
I'm here. Will everybody join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the the minutes of the January 21st meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we got to have a roll call vote. Sorry.
Ward Richardson. Aye. Wolf. Aye. Farr. Aye. Bennett.
Abstain.
Lizalde. Aye. Mosby.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Patino. And Chair Adam.
Aye. Okay, so next is the approval of the administrative items. Does anybody want to pull any items? Hearing. Let's have a roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Okay. Ward Richardson.
Aye.
Wolf. Aye. Farr. Aye. Bennett.
Aye.
Lizalde.
Aye.
Mosby.
Aye.
White.
Aye.
Patino. Aye. And Chair Adam.
Aye. Okay, so now it's time for public comment. Do we have any speaker slips?
We have a gentleman at Santa Barbara.
Did he fill out a speaker slip? Do we have a slip? Because we need one of those, right?
There was no one to hand it off to.
He did fill in a slip here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right, that's fine. I'm not trying to say you can't do it. I just want to get the slip, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
If you could tell us your name.
Cameron Gray, yes.
Okay, Mr.
So
Gray,
Cameron,
go ahead.
Cameron Gray, representing Community Environmental Council. I'll be brief. I just wanted to highlight a recent piece of legislation, Assembly Bill 1550, which was introduced by Assemblymember Gomez in January of this year. I'll spare you trying to go into all the details of that piece of legislation, but I would like to just highlight the fact that it could significantly affect our ability to secure greenhouse gas reduction funds. Those are the funds that are generated through the state's cap and trade program. Community Environmental Council is happy to work with APCD staff to better understand the implications of this bill for securing regional funding for transportation programs, transit programs, and land use projects. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, well, that leads us to discussion item 1. Will the clerk read that into the record?
Of course. Discussion item number 1, receive, update, marine shipping emission reduction initiatives.
Okay.
I'll start it off. Over the past 2 decades, the Air District has been working with a large consortium to address emissions from marine shipping off the shores of Santa Barbara. This, as you know, is a large source of emissions impacting our area. And we've recently, actually through 2014, completed the first pilot project. And we are now in the process of preparing for a second part of that study. Today you will receive an update as well as a discussion on next steps. Mary Bird, the supervisor, the community program supervisor with our technology and environmental assessment division, will be joined by Sean Hastings and Ryan Friedman with the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary to provide you a presentation. So, Libby, do I press one of these buttons to get it going?
Good
Nicely
afternoon,
done.
Chair Adam, members of the board. Thank you to Letty. And also welcome to our partners from Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. We're very happy to have them here to co-present on this issue with us. I want to give you a little brief background on why we're so concerned about shipping emissions in Santa Barbara County. We have some new analysis of satellite data results covering the ships that were in our trial program that addresses the question of whether they sped up when they were outside of the slow speed zone. And that's very interesting and exciting, and Ryan will be filling you in on that. And then we have updates on what has been going on in the last year, and we're in planning stages for a second vessel speed reduction program with some good funding news that Sean will let you know about. So as many of you know, ships that transit the Santa Barbara Channel to and from the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach are a major source of air pollution. These are older engines that have been largely unregulated in the past, and they produce many different air pollutants. And one of the key ones that we've always focused on is NOx, because NOx is a precursor to ozone. And we've always been concerned about our ability to meet ozone standards and to continue to meet ozone standards going forward. Now, we've achieved significant NOx reductions onshore in Santa Barbara County. The shipping issue is challenging for us. And there is some good news in the regulations, which we're already seeing some benefits from. The international rules took effect January 1st of last year, and the state rule in California, off the California coast, was already in place. These mandate cleaner fuels for these ships in our area, and we're seeing significant reductions in particulate, sulfur, and air toxics. The problem is we will see some NOx reductions from these rules, but they will initially apply only to cleaner engines as new engines are purchased. And that's a picture of an engine that's about 3 stories tall. The larger container ships, something like the Emma Maersk, it's more like a 5-story building inside there. So you can imagine it's not very often that the shipping companies are going to buy a new engine or buy a new ship with a new engine. So these NOx reductions we're not going to see for a very long time. It's nice that we're getting the cleaner fuel reductions, but that doesn't really help us with the NOx. Fortunately, we've been able to develop a strategy that is proven in providing immediate near-term NOx reductions, and that's vessel speed reduction. It's a proven strategy at the ports of LA and Long Beach. It's been in place for more than 14 years. They rely on it in their clean air planning to produce NOx emission reductions. It's well documented. And that's why we went with this for our 2014 program. And another thing about vessel speed reduction, and we're talking about going down to 12 knots or less, is it also offers whale protection benefits, which brings other partners and other funding opportunities to the table. And the interesting thing is, we want our NOx emission reductions in ozone season, which is April to October. That coincides with peak whale season. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sean to talk a little bit more about what happened in our 2014 trial.
Thank you, Mary, and Chair Adams' board. Sean Patrick, it's the one day I like to emphasize my middle name, and it's a pleasure to be here today. This is a real exciting partnership we've had with the Air Pollution Control District for a couple years now, and we see lots of opportunity going forward. As Mary noted, we are the benefit of the great whales visiting our region, typically April through October, November timeframe. And I'm talking about blue whales, fin whales, and humpback whales that come to this region to feed during the summer months because of the highly productive ocean we have here in the region. And what you see outlined here is the traffic separation scheme for the ships, and then around the islands is our jurisdiction with the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. We are part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration within the Department of Commerce. And as Mary mentioned, we've been trying to slow ships down in this region for over 8 years when it became apparent to us that ships hit whales, and it is a major threat to the recovery of these endangered species. Of course, the ship captains and companies aren't intentionally hitting the whales. It's just when the whales are in the shipping lanes, they don't get out of the way, and we're still trying to figure that out. Slowing ships down does offer benefit to whales. And as we've learned since we've been partnering with you all, is that there's great benefit to air quality as well. So we've been trying a voluntary approach. We've been asking ships to slow down since 2008 during the whale season, and we've been documenting non-compliance with that. So simply asking has not functioned to slow ships down. And when we started thinking about alternative ways of doing it, that's where, and we learned about the port programs, that's the genesis of this vessel speed reduction incentive trial, financial incentives to slow ships down. And the incentive package also includes not only money, but positive public relations. Shipping companies working with local and federal government to protect air quality and whales. Everyone wins. It's a good story to tell. We tried this in 2014 working with you, and we're very, very pleasantly surprised to see the high degree of cooperation from the shipping industry. 7 different companies, internationally based companies, signed up for the program. They wanted to enroll 80 different single transits through the channel in a program for which we only had funding for 30 or so ships. So that's when you know you've done something right, when demand exceeds your supply. And there's a lot of details about that program we could get into. During 2014, we qualified 27 ships to receive the $2,500 incentive payment. And for me, I had a pretty low bar because I had 7 years of non-compliance. I was hoping for 1 ship just to demonstrate that the program could work, and we had 27. So pretty excited about that. And on the whale side, which I can speak to, slower ships are safer for whales. And on your side of the house, you can actually measure in metric tons the benefits of the program, which were important and substantial and impressive. And the bigger lesson learned is that the companies will work with us. And that's very promising. That's why we're excited about continuing this program in 2016.
So thank you again for letting us come and speak today. One of the major questions we had moving forward, we had really great and high compliance with the trial, was what the behavior was like after we incentivized transit. So you saw that shipping lane, it was approximately about 100 nautical miles. What was the behavior of incentivizing a ship after? Were we just pushing the problem more north as ships maybe would speed up to make up for time lost? When we were looking at data for within the shipping lane, the Channel Islands actually host a terrestrial-based receiver on Santa Cruz Island, which allowed us to both the Air Pollution Control District and NOAA kind of work together to look at speeds for the incentivized transits, but it was out of the zone to kind of look at how those ships behaved after they left the range of the receiver. So we gathered some satellite data thanks to SpaceX and decided to kind of look at how incentives changed behavior, if at all, kind of as they left that shipping zone. And so we determined that the average speed in the same time for all other ships transiting in the area of interest that I'm going to show you in the upcoming slide was about 16.82 knots. To give you an idea, ships typically transit through the TSS, that lane we showed before, at about 14.7 was the last number I had it for last year. So higher than that 12 knots and higher than the 10 knots that's being advised by the Fisheries Service in their whale advisory zone. So I have this blue circle here is pretty much the points that we're using. Each of these points is a detection of a ship. AIS data works where ships will send out every between 5 to 15 seconds a transmission that's coded that has the speed, their position, where they're headed, the name of the ship, and an identifier number. Both the terrestrial systems and satellite systems are the same, collect the same kinds of data, but the satellite systems have less coverage. They have to get higher into the atmosphere to be recorded. So the coverage is a little different, so you can't really compare the data types. We collected satellite points for ships that transited in their VSR program, plus those that weren't enrolled. So looking kind of at that baseline, which was 16 knots approximately that I told you before. And then again, this is kind of where we're going to be focusing the data, because it's both ships that are traveling from the port of LA to San Francisco, as well as those that have started the Great Circle route, so on to Asian ports. Just to give you an idea, this is a graph of the speeds of the ship transits in the VSR zone. So looking again, there's a dotted line up here that is actually the 12 knots, so that's what they were required to transit under. And then these are the average speeds of ships as they went through their incentivized transit. So pretty high compliance, as Sean noted before, and you do kind of see a range of speeds in between 7 to 12 knots, which would indicate a success and the reduction in emissions that Mary talked about before. When you look in that area after that area of interest, you do see that ships are traveling a little faster. You do see some maintain kind of that 10 to 12 here, but that dotted line up here, that's the average speed of all other ships transiting in that area. So besides these two ships here, after their transit, ships typically aren't speeding up to catch up the time, pushing the emissions issues more northerly, and they've kind of built in that incentivized transit schedule into their time in the channel. So we're not seeing them kind of gun it to make up time or push the problems into different areas, which we thought may be an issue.
Thank you, Ryan. And so in between the 2014 trial and today, the Channel Island National Marine Sanctuary Advisory Council, which is a federal advisory board to us, created a marine shipping working group, of which Mary represented the Air Pollution Control District. And we brought together a diverse group of stakeholders that included shipping interests and the National Marine Fisheries Service, U.S. Coast Guard, whale experts, Mary representing air interests and conservation interests, for a very deliberate and comprehensive stakeholder review of shipping in this region. And we've been talking about ship strikes on endangered whales and air quality related to shipping. There are two other issues related to shipping in this region that we put on the table of concern to all of us in the region. And that one is navigational safety. Between the ships that are transiting south of the islands, they've left the transit separation scheme back in 2009. Roughly half the shipping in the region is occurring outside of a traffic separation scheme on the back side of the islands, and they're everywhere back there. They're not organized in shipping lanes. And we're concerned about the navigational safety issues there, and also the disruption of Navy activities that shipping in the region was thought to have caused. And of course, shipping wherever it is sometimes can conflict with other ocean users. Those of you that boat in the channel have been over to the islands. Crossing shipping lanes is much like that old game of playing Frogger running across a freeway. So we brought together these different interests for over a year, pulled together a ton of information on whales and air quality and Navy concerns, and discussed and debated what are ways of trying to achieve these 4 different goals here. Reducing ship strike, decreasing air pollution, and improving the navigational safety issues and reducing conflict. The working group, I am pleased to report, has culminated their work, and it will be delivering a full suite of recommendations in a report to our advisory council tomorrow. The meeting will be held in Ventura, and the working group passes its information on and its advice to the full council, which will then deliberate and decide what to forward on to the sanctuary superintendent, and on to NOAA. Many of these ideas that you see here go largely beyond our own jurisdiction, and we will forward those on to other parts of NOAA and the U.S. Coast Guard as it affects shipping outside of the sanctuary. And as we saw in the many data points Ryan shared, shipping spends a little time here, but when they do, we have concerns about the time they spend here. The range of ideas that we heard about and discussed, and we will be receiving tomorrow, range from research and education to certain management approaches, expanding whale sightings information to improve our understanding of whales in the region. There's interest in how can technology help us? Is there whale detection technology that could be put on ships? It's in its nascent stages, and we are exploring how technology may help. There's an existing area to be avoided. It's an international designation around the islands that functions very well to keep ships away from the islands. Ships and islands don't mix, and the shipping industry acknowledges this area to be avoided. And so one idea that the working group discussed was to expand that area to be avoided to cover additional whale habitat, pushing shipping out and farther away from sensitive whale areas. The one that probably interests this board the most would be this vessel speed reduction, which is why we're here today. Not surprisingly, there was not much shipping industry support for a regulatory approach. We've learned that, known that going into this process, and they emphasized that coming out of the process. There was unanimous support for this incentive-based approach. And again, where we are right now, having shipping industry interest is really paramount to vessel speed working. And it's the only tool that meets your interests as well as whale protection interests. And so we are excited that there's support to move forward with a phase 2. And so that brings us to what do we envision for 2016. And what we were, Mary alluded to, in the first trial, we were working with about $90,000. This year, thanks to an infusion of another $100,000 from the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, we believe we'll be able to virtually double the program in terms of its scale and scope. There's some of the sources of the funding up there. We received a small grant from the Volgino Family Foundation. They've long supported whale conservation work on the East Coast, and they're interested in doing similar work out here on the West Coast. The National Marine Sanctuary Foundation grant of $100,000, that's interesting to me in particular because the source of that funding is from a settlement that the Department of Justice reached with a shipping company that was caught polluting at sea in our region, dumping oil and not reporting it. And so what the Department of Justice reached with them is called the community service payment, and that $100,000 comes from a portion of that community service payment that must be used to enhance and improve the environment in which the violation occurred. And why I'm excited about that is the federal family's large, and this is my first connection to Department of Justice and the cases that they make, and they are often looking for places to apply these funds. And I raised my hand, and they said this is a great program. They love this idea of vessel speed reduction. The case was a ship pollution case, and here we are going to use some of the settlement payment to further reduce ship pollution in the region and protect whales at the same time. I hope to continue that relationship with the Department of Justice going forward. The other thing that the first year was, will ships slow down within a 100-mile range to 12 knots? We showed that functioned. We'd like to expand some of the parameters and explore with the industry what more they're able to or willing to do with that. We hit a sweet spot, I think, with the amount of the incentives and the PR we provided them, and we had high compliance. We're interested in exploring with them what additional work will they do. Will they provide fuel records? Will they put observers on board? Will they include whale recordings and sightings and share them with us? These are what additional PR can we do for them that they'd be interested in. These are some of the things we hope to explore, maybe even tiering our incentive payments. The more they do, the difference in payments they could be eligible for. these are things that we're in discussion with Mary and soon the shipping industry to see how we could expand the scale and scope of a second phase vessel speed reduction program.
So just wrapping up, we're still talking about the details for the implementation. We will probably return in May with an updated agreement with the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation because that is the fiscal agent for the program. We happen to be, at least what our shipping industry partners tell us, is we're the only program of this kind in the world that isn't administered through a port, because we don't have a port that has fees for the shipping companies. We needed a fiscal agent, and that's been the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. So to implement the program in 2014, we had an agreement with them, which we will work to update and bring back to you, along with some more of the details of the second program we're planning. So I now turn it over to you for any questions.
Mr. Richardson.
Yes, I have a question, Sean. You mentioned there were no documented whale strikes in the channel. Is that with the people that were the ships that were involved in the program, or all ships in the channel at that time?
Chair and supervisors, that was with all ships involved in the trial. There was one strike that occurred in 2014 through a ship that did come through the channel. That was not enrolled in our program, thank goodness.
Oh, yeah.
And so the thing to understand about ship speeds and ship strikes is slowing ships down reduces the risk that a strike will be lethal.
Right.
It does not mean that, and it likely means, but we haven't determined yet, that slower speeds mean the whales get out of the way. We are testing that. We're doing whale tagging work with ships on whales that are in shipping areas. But the more important thing is, if a whale is hit, it's better that the ship be going slowly. And thankfully, there's no documented strikes from those enrolled in our program.
Now, what's the average whale strike in that channel over years? Is that 1, 2, 3?
So the toughest thing for us on the NOAA side is pinpointing exactly where strikes occur. As I said, the ships often don't know they even hit a whale. And though it seems logical where you have concentrations of whales and ships, that's likely where the incident occurred. On average, there's 1 to 3 ship strikes a year along the California coast, mainly between San Francisco and here, our port of LA. While that may not seem like a large number, those are only the whales we know that are hit and struck. We suspect, and there's literature that suggests that 5, 6, 7 times that number of animals are actually hit and sink away or drift away. So what we see is the proverbial tip of the iceberg. We're concerned it's more than that. And NOAA is charged with protecting and help these species and helping their populations rebound. We've determined with these larger whale species an acceptable level of take, as we define under the Endangered Species Act, by human causes, is anywhere from 1 to 3 animals per year, depending on the population. And so we're right at that threshold legally right now of ship strikes being a known source of mortality. And as I said, we suspect there's likely more than what we see.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, seeing no other lights, I'm going to start. I have a few questions. What percentage of the total transits through the channel does 27 transits make?
I think we believe there are annually, you have the answer, Ryan? You may have a more exact answer than I.
So I just kind of wrapped up some additional analysis for this year looking at the voluntary measure, and I think I had around 800 transits in a summer. So that would, with 27, it would be, that'll give you an idea of how many.
Define summer.
This summer is from, I went from June until end of November for this.
Okay. All right. So there's 1,600 trips through there a year? More or less?
I've seen the number of 2,500, even more so. The 2014 program was designed as a trial to sort of test this proof of concept. And one of the interesting things about looking at the satellite data is one of the concerns that always comes up with vessel speed reduction is the speed up concern, because then you're undermining the emission reductions outside the zone. And in this case, it's very positive that we can report that we're not seeing a lot of speed up.
Okay, except for
So-
that's not responsive to my question.
Well, I was just responding why it's such a small number, but it's still established some significant findings and almost as a research pilot project.
Okay. So, based upon pollutant totals reduced, what percentage reduction to total channel source pollution do those reductions make if applied to all trips?
Well, when we do our emissions inventories, we generally find that shipping is almost over 50% of our NOx emissions inventory. So in terms of what we're achieving with the single trial program, that would be a very small number in that bucket. That's a big bucket. Small
Yeah, because
percentage.
the big bucket's 15 to 2,500 trips, and we're talking about 27.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
What percentage impacts would these reductions make on coastal air quality?
Well, the challenge we have here is ozone is considered a regional pollutant. And so we're contributing to a larger pot of pollutants that will react chemically to form ozone. So there are a lot of factors in meteorology that go into the formation of ozone. And we know that from our modeling study, the modeling studies we rely on. It is very difficult to tie a particular NOx reduction somewhere in the county to a particular ozone result somewhere else or even in the same location. So, Chair Adam, I appreciate that question. I think it's one we always struggle with.
Okay, but it's going to be, I mean, it's on order of magnitude, it's pretty small rather than pretty big because you only had 27 trips out of that many.
I think one thing also to point out is the amount of tons that were reflected in this presentation for the total dollar amount. We had 16 tons of NOx that we were able to demonstrate reduction for a $90,000 investment from cross-section of stakeholders. So that's a pretty effective approach to take, even though it is such a tiny percent of the total vessels that are eligible to participate long-term in this type of project.
That's $90,000 for 16 tons.
Yeah, that's Chris, or Sean, I believe you said it was 90,000 for the first pilot year? Yeah.
Okay. So how does that compare to other possible methods of reduction? I mean, could you buy one of these guys a Tier 4 engine and stick it in and have
Those
a
are
reduction?
pretty big engines.
Well, I realize that, but I
Yeah.
mean, you know, it's dollars per cost of dollars
They
per
could do it
ton of-
voluntarily, though. Then it wouldn't cost us anything.
That's true too.
Let me try to put this in context, Chair Adam, to other programs we have. We do consider several tons of NOx reductions when we look at our control measures. We go down, anywhere between 4 or 5 tons a year up to 16, 18. So 16 tons of NOx reduction is not a small amount when you look at what other things we do. For example, our Moyer cost effectiveness target is 18,000 a ton of NOx reductions. So yes, it's totally apples and oranges. They're happening in different locations in the county, but those are some cost figures.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
If you go to the old car buyback program, averaging about $1,000 per car over the period here from about 10 years, per ton of savings, it's almost $30,000 per ton. Here you're getting 16 tons for 100 grand or 90 grand. That's a better deal than the car buyback program.
Yeah, it's $5,600 a ton.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's wonderful. But I'd love to have that in the report.
Mr.
Supervisor
Chair?
Farr.
Thank you. So if we got 27 ships that qualified for the $90,000 cost, and you said that it looks like we may be able to double our funding. Since there was so much interest the last time, you're not anticipating having any problems doubling the number of ships that, you know, hopefully will qualify for the incentive then, that will enroll enough and use all that money.
Yeah, that's correct, Supervisor Farr, that we, as I mentioned last time around, we had over 80 ships apply for the incentive program, and we had funding for 30 plus. And with the doubling of the funding, I'm estimating that we'll easily hit 50 plus ships this time around. And I was sitting here thinking about, Chair Adam, your question about tons, and I think of whale tons, and a blue whale is a 100,000 ton animal. And
100,000 tons?
No.
No, it's not. No, it's not. 100,000 pounds?
100,000 pounds.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, some of them bigger than that, but yes. big animal. So the point being that
Those
we
ones are all
look at
extinct.
there's three approaches here. One is voluntary, hasn't worked, and they could do it voluntarily, and we've asked, that hasn't functioned. Federal government could regulate them. And that is a stick that's always there under several different federal statutes, one that we haven't decided to swing yet. The incentive-based approach is one that's engendering public-private partnership and cooperation, and we're excited about that. I was taking your question and thinking about, well, if we scaled the program up to all ships, what kind of funding would be necessary? And what would, in your case, what would be the benefit on the air pollution side? What would be the benefit on the whale side? And we are thinking a larger scale, but to get there, we first had to demonstrate there in the first trial, would it work? I think we have. The second phase, we want to expand that. Well, how far can we push it to work? How many more ships would be interested? What more could we get them to do with that? And that'll help tighten up, I think, all the numbers that we're interested in. If appropriate, I'd like to provide to Mary before your next board meeting an economic analysis that we're doing right now on the cost to shipping, to slowing them down or directing them to different areas, cost in terms of time or money. A very elaborate economic study that'll be complete very soon. We receive an update on it tomorrow. A corollary to that study is we're looking at the whale economy, besides the intrinsic value of these animals, but also the value of a whale to the whale watch industry and to the American public. And it is possible to quantify this, and then we'll be able to start to get to I think some of the heart of your question is, well, scaling up and what's the value and what do we get for it? And I'm thinking of tons of whales saved, and you're thinking about tons of air pollution reduced. And some of this economic work and what we learned this summer, I think, will start to get us closer to a better understanding of what would a vessel speed reduction program in this region or broader cost, and what would the benefits be.
Well, and you know, to Mr. Richardson's point, you know, if Carl Moyer is $18,000 a ton, and this is $5,600 a ton, maybe we should do more of this and not as much of that. That's my point. So, who's got the light on?
Actually,
over here?
I still have my light on, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
You know, obviously, all these ships are probably a little bit different. So, of course, you're tracking all of the data for numbers of ships that qualified, the cost, the reduction, because I would think each year it's going to be a little bit different depending on those ships that are enrolled. And in some years, we're not going to get quite as much savings, that you're not going to be able to just multiply it out and get the same thing. And hopefully some years it might even be better. Is that accurate to say that?
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Farr. I agree. And so we're learning. We hit a certain sector of the shipping industry that could and would participate. And the shipping sector is large. And so part of what we can do with more funding this year is start to see what other ships, different types of ships that travel different speeds and different routes and have different schedules, how do we bring them in as well? That's part of what we want to explore. And you're absolutely right. it will change over time. And so how do we adapt to the changing industry as well as the changing needs of our different mandates in the area? And the shipping sector is changing as we speak. Fewer larger ships, cleaner ships over time, but not now. And the ship speeds have come down from a high of 18 to 24 knots, 14 to 16. We need them to come down even a little bit more. And I should mention that the success of this program and the willingness of this rather creative partnership we've established is being viewed by other sanctuaries and air districts that are saying, well, we have similar challenges and problems. My colleagues at the Gulf of the Farallones and Cordell Bank National Marine Sanctuaries off San Francisco, they've been asking ships to slow down when whales are there. And we share the same whales and we share the same ships. And we're all trying to achieve the same goals. And so there's promise in what we've done so far and what I hope we can do this year as well.
And just one last question, Mr. Chair. I mean, I would think that for people that know the shipping industry and the various companies and the types of ships that, traverse our channel, that, quite frankly, some are probably better actors than others, so to speak. The age of the ship is newer. The engine doesn't belch out quite as much of the stuff we don't want. And so, in trying to see how we're going to ramp up the program, has there been any analysis of, is there a way to target more of those ships that are greater polluters, so to speak? And if they're not interested at $2,500 a transit, what would they be interested in? Because if you can get them enrolled, even if it costs more, there may be a greater reduction associated with it. So has there been any studies to do with that?
I'll answer that, Supervisor Farr. One of the things we're looking at doing in this second phase is requiring all of the specific information from the ships about their engine, about their fuel use, those sorts of things, possibly for a higher incentive level, so we can start drilling deeper into the data. And we're also looking more closely at the emissions from the ships that were enrolled in the 2014. So hopefully we'll have that information going forward, and I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mosby.
You mentioned in the future you're going to be doing more economic analysis. How did you come up with a $2,500 per transit right now?
We looked at what the ports were doing, and we extrapolated our miles, our stretch through the channel that we were asking them to reduce speeds was longer than what the ports require. So we looked at what the fee adjustments they were making at the ports, and we kind of went from there.
So you kind of just ran, what if you went to 1,000? Maybe you could have got 3 times as many ships at 1,000. Maybe, I mean, it seems like it's really, you're doing your economic analysis in the future. It's like maybe you should have had that done in the past to see what the teaser was. Maybe $1,000 would have been enough, and they could have significantly reduced that much more.
Well, we did have conversations with the shipping industry when we were embarking on this program, and that number did get vetted with them as the number that they would want to see. But I think that's a good point. And I think that until you go out there and see what kind of interests you have, you don't know for sure who's going to join.
You might put a teaser out there, put $1,000 out and see how many people come out with the teaser. Sure. I mean, you might get significant. My other question is, how did you know that the ships that signed up for that weren't already the slow ships? They weren't the people who like to cruise the channel already and just kind of, look at the whales or something?
Board Member Mosby, we had a requirement for our program. There were 2 criteria. One was that they had to be enrolled in the ports programs because the ports didn't want us to be competitive with their program, and most of the ships are, so that didn't eliminate very many ships. The other criteria was they had to have had a previous transit through the channel at 14 or greater knots.
And that was documented through your satellite imaging?
Through the land-based receivers, because they cover the channel.
But was that, did you average them over time or something? Maybe just because they did one fast trip, they qualified? What I'm getting at is, what if the guy, does do a slow cruise, and he's going, hey, this is great, I'm already cruising through here. So, in that case, you wouldn't have the benefit, right? So if you had the true analytical data that showed that these guys are the high speed always, You know, 99% of the time they travel this rate. You know, and I mean, watching some of the shipping industry, some people do like to cruise it and, you know, put the pedal to the metal, you know, making dinner or something, and then they get it going when they go out. Anyhow, I think that you should have more verifiable proof that the guys you got are the speeders.
So what we did, or what I did to verify, is I looked at all transits 4 months prior, which is because the shipping industry has shifted behavior so much with the CARB and the ECA rulings. It's been pretty dynamic. So if you want an idea of how the ship's going to behave, you can't really look over the same long time scales that you used to. So it was more than one transit for a lot of ships, and we made sure that they had an average speed of over 14 knots across a 4-month period prior. So for the ships traveling between San Francisco and LA, it's a lot more transits than, say, the ones on the circle route. So I can't be like, there's so many transits, but the majority of ships we were looking at more than one transit over 14 knots.
Yeah. I'd maybe extend that a little more than 4 months, but I mean, you know, maybe they're only making 1 or 2 trips in that 4 months. So I just, you know, scientifically I'd analyze that. And then with the whale benefits, you know, I understand the laws of physics, force equals mass times velocity, and you slow it down. But, and again, in hearing what you said, and scientifically, it seems like we're putting a lot of guess on really if there was true whale benefit and able, potentially there is, like you said, if it's hit, you bumped it, it rolled off, it went on. So there's a lot of, you know, a lot of warmness with this. I understand the warmness aspect on that, but I think scientifically, if you could dig in a little deeper with the analyzing in the past, like you said, there was 1 to 3 years, 1 to 3 whales a year, but not really. But if you had a chart that was identifying in the last 20 years, this is how many we've had. And again, as Mr. Adams was asking, how many trips are we talking? You know, how many transits are we? So you have the statistical analysis together with graphed and stuff like that. Be a little better and easier to touch, and you know, not just on the, well, we're benefiting whales. Are we? I mean, I hear what you're saying, and understanding reducing speed has the potential to, and having the word potentially benefit in there would probably be really what's going on right now without the true verifiable fact that we are, and we bumped one and it made it, you know? So maybe actually if you had a whale strike and you bumped it and it made it, that would have been like, hey, look, there was one hit, but it didn't hurt it. You know what I'm saying? Even though we don't want to see that, but I'm just a couple points I would add to your equations.
And you know, I'm listening to all this and thinking, you know, maybe there's a way to get more bang for the buck by finding out who the fastest ships are. And you're going to get the most, if you could target the fastest ships, you know, maybe you get the 25 fastest ships and figure out how much it's going to take to pay them down, because you get the most whale benefit out of that, and you probably get the most NOx benefit out of it as well. So instead of trying to go out there and figure out of the world of 2,500 ships, maybe you can shrink that down, find out who the and they're not necessarily bad actors, because maybe they got a Tier 4 engine in that ship and it's just more efficient and faster. But if you can pay them $3,500 and slow them down, did you get more out of it than you got out of the guy that was going 14? You know what I mean? So, anyway. All right. Do we need a
I just have
motion on
one
this?
comment.
Sure. Supervisor Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank all of you for the work that you've done and continue to do. I remember first getting on this board and seeing that horrible chart, and you know, with one of the biggest polluter being the major ships going through the channel. So the fact that we've come this far in such, you know, that short period of time from when you have started this program, I think it's pretty remarkable. And the fact that you've received a $100,000 grant is exceptional. And, you know, I think we all hope that that will continue, and I'm sure it will when people start seeing the results. And the dual benefits that we're seeing, not just from our own air pollution but reduction, but also the asset to our whales out in the channel. So kudos to all of you and everyone that we saw on the list who's part of this team. I just think you're doing a remarkable job and really being leaders in this in this whole system. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, can I get a motion to receive and file?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion. Can we do a roll call vote, please? Thank you.
Board Member Richardson? Wolf? Farr? Bennett? Lizalde? Mosby? White?
Aye.
Patino? And Chair Adam.
Aye. Which brings us to discussion item 2. Ms. Jeanette.
Do you want to read it in?
Sure, I'll read it off while sure. Discussion item number 2, district representation at Santa Barbara County Education Office Education Celebration Event.
The Air District has been working with the Santa Barbara Office of Education for the past 12 years. The Care for Our Earth program successfully provides many grants to teachers throughout the county who are interested in carrying out environmental service projects in their classroom. Liz Hoffman, the Air District's public information and educational specialist, along with Mary Bird, are both involved in the implementation of this program. Today, Mary will provide a brief presentation to your board.
Good afternoon, Chair Adam, board members. As you know, we've had a long and very successful partnership with the Santa Barbara County Education Office, and your board honored them a few years back for their outstanding participation and support of teachers in the county. In 2009, we started the Care for Our Earth Grants program with the County Education Office and utility company partners to encourage projects that would save energy, teach environmental and science concepts, cut traffic and pollution at school sites. The Water Agency joined us a few years later, and it's been a very successful partnership. We provide many grants of this year, $300 each, and this year we will be awarding 38 teachers with mini grants at 25 county schools. You see some pictures here from successful programs at schools around the county: Pine Grove and Orchid, Santa Ynez School, Mary Buren in Guadalupe, Santa Barbara High. This is a partnership with these other agencies, and not every grant addresses specifically air issues. Some address water issues, some address other science and environmental concepts. You have a list in your packet, and you are invited to select a board member to represent the district at the County Education Office's Education Celebration, at which they honor and recognize teachers with lots of different programs, as well as the Care for Our Earth program. Here you see pictures from Catalina School and CARP's effort, Blockman, Monta Vista, and Tommy Kunst in Santa Maria Bonita School District. So this is a wonderful event, highly recommend it, and it would be great if one of you were interested in attending. I know our air pollution control officer will be there.
Supervisor Wolf.
I just want to say, because Mary knows too, that I've been to a few of these, and they're always exceptional to go to. I would like to say I will definitely be there this year, May 26th, but I don't want to commit to doing that, but if I can, I will definitely be there. Is that the right date? The 26th, yeah. Oh.
I hope you have an updated
So now you
presentation
can go.
in your packet. If
Yeah,
not,
it says
I'll give
26
you-
and 5:30
It's
p.m. in the
26.
packet.
May
Yeah.
26th.
Yeah, there might be one typo that got left. Sorry.
And it does, yeah, as you said, it does cover the entire county, and it's very exciting. Thank you.
Okay, any other board comments? Guess we're having a receive and file here. Can I get a motion? Okay. Ms. Ortiz, let's do the roll call.
It's okay. Board Member Richardson? Wolf? Farr? Bennett? Lizalde? Mosby? White?
Aye.
Patino? And Chair Adam?
Aye. Which brings us to discussion item 3. Want to read it in?
Will do. Discussion item number 3, receive presentation on the hydrogen readiness plan update.
All right, thank you. This is your final presentation of the day. Over the past 5 years, the Santa Barbara County Air District has been involved working with both the San Luis Obispo and the Ventura counties to secure funding to expand alternative fuels throughout the Clean Fuel Corridor, considered mainly the 101 corridor. It's been extremely successful when we link arms with the counties to the north and south of us. By ourselves, it's hard to successfully secure these competitive grants. We have to date been awarded for that Tri-County region 3 or 4 different grants, both federal and state grants, to promote alternative fuels. We've had to plug in Central Coast, that was our initial effort. Then we went to the electric vehicle readiness plan, and currently Santa Barbara County is leading the alternative fuels readiness plan that covers CNG, biofuels, and a little bit of hydrogen. But the plan that you're going to hear about today specifically is a grant that the Air District, the Santa Barbara, a hydrogen readiness plan. Ben Ellenberg will be presenting to you today. He is the division manager of the Technology and Environmental Assessment Division. Thank you.
Mr. Ellenberger.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here today to update you on the activities that we're working on related to hydrogen transportation and just give an update.
Can we get a mic?
There we go. Thank you. Chair Adam, board members, thank you. I'm going to give you an update today on the activities that we're specifically working on related to hydrogen transportation, and a little bit of background on things that are going on at the state and national level as well. So first will be a little bit of background why we're interested in this issue, why we're working on it, state, national, international action. I'll give you an update on what we've done so far on the project that we're funded through this grant, what our next steps for that is, and then some things we're starting to look at to do once this grant project is done to follow up afterwards. So our main interest in hydrogen vehicles and zero-emission vehicles in general is because it's a significant source of pollution in the county. It's about 18% of smog-forming pollutants in the county. There's been a lot of progress in reducing emissions from gasoline and diesel-fueled vehicles, but they still remain a pretty significant source of pollution. And so continued reductions from vehicles depend on increasing the number of zero-emission vehicles that are on the road. Fuel cell vehicles are new. They're just becoming available to consumers. You know, right now in California, it's a couple hundred, but they're rapidly increasing. More companies are coming in and offering them, and companies are coming in and looking to offer them in heavy-duty applications. Right now, there's a couple of bus lines in the LA area that are doing demonstration fleets of buses. FedEx has started putting hydrogen-fueled vehicles in as airport handling vehicles at their big operation in, I think it's Memphis. And actually, there's about 6,000 hydrogen-powered forklifts in operation throughout the U.S. now. And that's another kind of heavier duty operation that's actually expanding pretty rapidly.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Do you
Yes.
know how much heat is generated by conversion of the hydrogen to the power?
There are different types of hydrogen fuel cells, depending on the exact chemistry. Some operate at very, very high temperatures.
Okay.
The ones that operate in cars, I think, tend to operate at slightly lower temperatures. But it's still, if you put a thermometer right across that, it's, you're talking hundreds of degrees. I don't know the exact number.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
And so just to stop a minute and talk what is a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. The manufacturers call these fuel cell electric vehicles versus battery electric vehicles, because to them, everything from the front wheel forward is really the same as a battery electric vehicle. It's an electric motor up front and a power controller that sets, tells the electricity how much electricity goes to the wheels to tell it how fast to go. And it's really from the front wheel back is where these are different from battery electric vehicles. So instead of a big battery along the bottom, in the back there's a hydrogen storage tank, and it stores the hydrogen at very high pressure. And typically those are made up of multiple layers of carbon fiber wrapping them, and then other materials to protect them. And then they have safety valves that would shut them off in the event of a crash. And then the hydrogen goes to the fuel cell stack. And so the fuel cell stack is just a membrane with special materials in it. On one side, air flows over it, and on the other side, hydrogen flows past it. And across that membrane, the hydrogen and the oxygen and the air react. It forms water vapor, and that chemical reaction forms the electric current that actually goes to the motor and drives the wheels.
Supervisor Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at that picture of the car, when you talked about some of the applications that are getting more widespread, like the forklift or maybe some of the bigger trucks, it seems like those are cases where the risk of a crash or an accident is not as great, even in like a FedEx truck or something, where if they get into an accident, chances are they're going to come out better than a vehicle will. So just kind of follow up on the temperature question that Chair Adam asked. I'm just wondering, how they're building these with enough layers of protection so that if there's an accident that actually happens to hit right where the hydrogen's being stored or where some of this heat is, I mean, how are they building vehicles now that are not going to be more prone to explode?
That's a very good question, and that's a lot of people's first concern with these. And so the first layer of protection there is making those tanks very, very strong. It's usually they'll have an inner liner that's like a material that actually hold the hydrogen because it's very small molecules. Then it's multiple layers, usually of carbon fiber. And then it has outer layers of other materials to protect the carbon fiber from abrasion and damage. And when we talk to the people who make these, what they say is if they get in a crash that's bad enough to break the tank, there's not going to be much left of the rest of the car. That's usually the very strongest part of the car. And then the systems are all set up to have automatic valves, so that if there's a leak downstream, it detects that and shuts that off, so no more can leak out of the tank. And then also, it's just the general safety design of the vehicle, so that hydrogen's a very light gas. So with gasoline or liquid fuels, you're concerned in an accident that it's going to pool on the ground, and then you have to clean it up. With hydrogen, what you want is the cars to be designed such that if you do have a leak, it can just go up into the atmosphere. And it's very light, so it dissipates very quickly. I'll get to this in a minute, but it's kind of interesting to me. We've started to do some outreach to fire departments and first responders to find out what their concerns are and to set up training programs for them. And the first few times we've talked to them, they really aren't too concerned about the hydrogen part of the cars. They say, we're used to dealing with explosive gases, compressed gases, and all sorts of applications. They do training for that. The thing they were most interested in was the electric part of the car, and if they go respond to an accident, to know how to isolate and turn off the electric systems so that they're not concerned about having their people get electrocuted when they go to pull people out of cars and things like that.
Okay, well, I mean, it just seems like the concern about a more hyper-flammability in an accident, would be a concern. Not so much that it's a leak, but that somehow it's going to be more explosive than might be likely in an accident with a gasoline vehicle. So I just raised the question because I'm looking at it. Looks like there's a couple different spots where you really wouldn't want to get broadsided.
Like a Pinto?
Yeah. Thank you.
I think if I can talk about that for a second, I think what's going on here is that that fuel tank is designed so that it can't be punctured, and when the accident happens, there's a sensor that shuts the tank. It's not like a gas tank where it's going to spill all over the place. That thing's going to get contained, and then it keeps it from blowing up. Even if there's a short in the electrical system or something, that would actually be a spark that would ignite a gasoline car on fire. This one, I think the engineering's good enough that it's not a major issue, which is why they're getting away with it so far. Mr.
Thank you.
Ellenberg.
So what's going on in California right now is there's a lot of support and investment at the state level. Executive order in 2012 established a zero-emission vehicle action plan. It set a goal to get 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2025. I said earlier, right now it's just a few hundred hydrogen vehicles on the road. There's about 200,000 battery electric vehicles registered in California right now, so that's a pretty ambitious target. That's a big ramp up from where we are now, if we were going to actually meet that 2025 target. And there's 4 parts that the action plan's targeted on: infrastructure and planning, which is kind of where our grant falls under, and consumer awareness, transforming fleets, getting more and more zero-emission vehicles into fleets, and then doing it in a way that grows jobs and private investment in California. Separately from the zero-emission vehicle action plan, Assembly Bill 8 established a budget for the California Energy Commission of $20 million a year until there's 100 stations in the state. And so they're using that as incentive funding to help support kind of the initial build out of the network of stations throughout the state. And then separately for that, for the people actually producing vehicles, is zero emission vehicle standards, which are rising standards for the vehicle manufacturers, that more and more vehicles that they sell each year have to be zero emission vehicles. And if all these goals are met, there's an estimate that by 2025, that could displace up to 1.5 billion gallons of petroleum fuel a year. So it could be a pretty big impact. And this is where we are right now. You can see each dot on here is a hydrogen station that's either been built or is in the process of being built. And so you can see really that's clustered in Los Angeles and San Francisco. There's one station along I-5 kind of halfway through. And then actually on La Cumbre is kind of one of the first stations in the state that's not right next to either San Francisco or LA. That station's actually under construction right now. We expect it's going to be operational very soon. And we'll plan to send an update out to the board once that's operational.
Supervisor Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So exactly where is it?
It's on La Cumbre, right by the 101. And when I say stations, yeah, it's the conserve fuel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that actually leads to my next question, because, at the beginning of the presentation, we're talking about, besides the hydrogen, all electric charging, natural gas, besides, regular gasoline. So, of course, as the automobile industry grew, it's been oil companies that also had the service stations. And so, are they also embracing then and going to be putting, is every service station going to have all these different things on it? Are they going to be focused? How do you see the industry going with this?
So all, if not, or at least most of these, and I think possibly all of these, are at existing service stations. So the one on La Cumbre, it's, they have their islands with their gasoline pumps, and then you kind of look off to the side, and it's set a little ways away with its own little building where the actual equipment is, and it's just another little, it looks like a gas island. And that's what people expect most for consumer locations. That's what people are used to. And that's a big goal, and that's what when you talk to people in the auto companies, they say for this to be successful, it's got to work for people the way their current cars work. If you're asking them to make big changes in how they go about their day or things like that, people aren't going to accept it. So we expect that most of these will be at gasoline stations, and it'll just be something else they offer.
So then potentially you could have an existing service station that would have a battery charging area, you would have hydrogen, you would have traditional gasoline, and maybe even natural gas. Then they could all
Yeah.
might be at the same service station.
Yes,
and available.
Potentially. Although with battery charging spots, usually that takes 30 minutes or more to get much charge into your car. So a lot of those, instead of being at gas stations where you just want to stop, get a fill up in 5 minutes and then go, which you can do with hydrogen, you can't do that yet with batteries. So most of those are usually at shopping centers or
Bars.
restaurants or
Yeah.
parking lots where you're going to leave your car for half an hour or an hour.
Well, we've talked about this before here, but one of the interesting things about that is when we have funded, part of the charging stations and all that, is how do people know where they are? And especially if you're on the road and you're traveling and you need to know, where your next charge is going to be. That, there's some apps and things now, but it's kind of grown in a different way than what we're talking about there, because you would think that if you really want ease for the consumer, that whatever your vehicle runs on, you should be able to find it, in the location that you're used to. And I realize that the timing is different, and yet, if you're coming in from out of town, and you don't know where the shopping centers are, or you don't know where, where you're going to be able to find it, it would be interesting to just kind of have it one-stop shopping, so to speak. But anyway, this is fascinating. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and if I might, the beauty of this hydrogen stuff is it takes exactly as long to fill up a hydrogen car as it does, and you guys all know I drove one, and I was just impressed with its sameness of the performance between gas and a comparably horsepowered gas car and and this hydrogen. It was fantastic to drive, and he says it's just like pulling into a gas station and filling up. Takes exactly the same amount of time to transfer fuel. And so, I think what's going to happen here in the long run is some of these other technologies are going to become dinosaurs because the market's just not going to accept them. To expect somebody to charge their car in a certain way that takes a long time is just, it's not as efficient. And when this becomes a viable option, I think it's gonna take over all the electric charge electrics, and there may be people that continue to like those, and God bless them. I hope the market's available to everybody, but this is as close to gasoline and a portable fuel source as you can get. Supervisor Wolf.
Well, I think this is an interesting discussion, and I think Supervisor Farr brings up some points that at least have made me start to think about the interrelationship between, with the gas stations. But and I think as we move forward, we should try and embrace all forms of alternative transportation. And as many of my colleagues know, I just bought a plug-in hybrid, and there is really nothing more convenient than plugging your car in at home.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't even have to, go to a gas station. You don't have to go to a mall. You don't have to do any of those things. You plug it in at home, and there's really nothing that can be more convenient than that. and actually really inexpensive if you have solar panels, which we happen to have. So we can't forget about all those other options and opportunities that are available. This is just one other one that it's interesting, and we'll see how it unfolds.
Thank you. So- I'm just going to step back for a minute and talk about it's not just California that's focusing on this. There's a lot of effort, a lot of interest, both nationally and internationally. On the West Coast, it's California and Oregon are really focused on zero emission vehicles, and that is both battery electric and fuel cell electric vehicles, as well as a cluster of states in the Northeast. And so 8 states have together set a goal nationwide to have 3.3 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2025. So if you remember back to the 1.5 million target for California, we could conceivably be about half of the zero-emission vehicles in the country would be in California by 2025. Japan and Tokyo specifically have really aggressively been supporting the technology. During the Olympics, they're expecting that to be a big demonstration for them when everyone comes for the Olympics. And then multiple countries in Europe. I put Germany and the UK up here as an example, but they're not the only ones. There's a lot of other countries in Europe that are building out infrastructure and looking to develop the cars. So our local tie-in to all this is the Hydrogen Readiness Plan. It's being funded by a grant from the Energy Commission. We came before your board in the middle of last year to accept that grant, and it covers a bunch of activities. So the first is a regional plan to identify what the infrastructure needs would be throughout San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Identify some potential sites. Create a permitting toolkit so that permitting agencies, when somebody comes in, with this new thing, the individual permitting agencies in each city or each county don't have to get up to speed from scratch, that they've heard about it before, they know where to find references, they know what permits look like and how to review applications. To do community outreach, so that people in the community know about it. To do outreach to first responders so that people know, fire departments, EMTs, if there is an accident with vehicles, they know what to do. And then also to assess potential for adoption by fleets in the region. So what we've done so far is we've met with the Energy Commission, we've set up the plan for the project and the schedule. When I'm talking about this going forward, I'm going to say we, and I don't mean just the Air District. It's really important that the partners that are working with us have been a big part of this project. So it's the Air Districts in both San Luis Obispo and Ventura, as well as the other groups that are part of it. UC Irvine, their advanced powertrain group, has helped us a lot with the modeling and the infrastructure planning. The Community Environmental Council is helping a lot with outreach. There's a safety company that's helping us a lot with the outreach to first responders and fire departments. Energy Independence Now is a group that works extensively with hydrogen infrastructure, and they're assisting in the overall project. And then Ivor John Consultants is the consulting firm that's doing a lot of the groundwork for this. So we worked with all those groups and got the subcontracts set up with them. UC Irvine has done a lot of the modeling on potential fleet and private vehicle adoption in the region to help target where these stations might be needed early. We're in the process of drafting an infrastructure plan. And then we've gone out and we've started talking to planning departments and fire departments to see what their needs are for training and information. So this is a very preliminary output from the modeling that UC Irvine did. They have kind of been really involved in initial rollout of the stations and identifying areas in the Bay Area and in the LA area where stations might need to go. So this was kind of them branching out into this area. And so what they did was they looked at areas where people were buying hybrid cars and battery cars, and areas where they think that kind of the early adopters, the first people that would be buying private vehicles might be, and where stations demand might be for that. It looks like it's a little bit hard to see up on here, but there's the little green dots are kind of their initial cut on where stations might be needed. And so you can see in Ventura, that's kind of the first big cluster, some of the areas that have higher population, going out into Santa Barbara and Goleta. So like I said, this is the initial cut on personal vehicle sales. So now we're going to take this and go do a lot of on-the-ground research, and then we want to look a lot at regions where fleets might be interested in adopting vehicles and might drive demand for stations there. So we expect once we pull that in, going up into Santa Maria and into San Luis Obispo, especially along the 101 corridor, not just for people buying vehicles right there, but then also people looking to travel up and down through the state. So our timeline is to keep working on this through the rest of 2016 and complete the project in early 2017. What we're doing now, we've got the computer modeling, so now we're doing on-the-ground reality checks and starting to talk with station owners and people in the area to gauge level of interest, and then that'll help us finalize the infrastructure plan, and then help us target where we do the community outreach and the training activities in the areas that are likely to see these stations first. And then we're also looking to do more outreach to public fleets to assess where people would be interested and in adopting the vehicles. So this chart on the right kind of shows where the state investment is right now. The little green line that goes up and then runs flat across it. This shows the stations that have been funded by the state already. So they've funded 51 stations so far. And then the little dashed line that goes up is an estimate of the number of cars in the state and the amount of demand they'd have for hydrogen. So if you look at that little dashed line, doesn't hit the green line until around 2019. So that shows with the number of stations that are out right now, if people only bought cars right around those stations, there'd be enough stations to support that demand out to 2019, and then after that, there'd be more cars on the road than stations could support. The state is looking to continue to fund stations, and so those next two bars, kind of the purple and the lighter green, higher up are a couple different scenarios. They're looking at how rapidly they'll fund stations and where that'll go in terms of the demand on the road. So depending on how quickly the state funds stations, you can see they can kind of keep up with demand out to 2020, maybe 2021. And there, if the projections of the manufacturers on how many vehicles they plan to sell follow, it could be around 2021. They'd be running into problems with, are there enough stations out there to fuel all the vehicles on the road? So what we're looking to do with our plan, we don't want it to be, we put together a nice binder that looks really good and then we put it up on the shelf and no one looks at it again. The immediate thing we want is that it can help target private developers, people looking to build stations themselves and maybe go out on their own and apply for competitive grants from the state for stations, where they'd be able to go into Ventura and Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo and say, hey, these locations have been identified, they're good locations, we know we can get them permitted, we know we can get them constructed, and it would make private developers, it'd make it easier for them to go out and get grants from the state to build stations. It could also help us target local public investment. If if public fleets are looking to adopt it. It can help them identify. One model could be if to help a public fleet that needs to build a station to support their public fleet. If they build that, it could also be at a place where there's private demand for the fuel, and they could sell the fuel to people and do that. We're also looking at potential ways, other ways there could be local funding opportunities. These bars tell you statewide how many stations there are going to be, but if there aren't, if there's not state funding for stations in the area, it doesn't really help people locally if you have to drive 50 miles to the nearest station. So we've started talking, this is very preliminary, we've started talking to people with County P&D about the concept of using mitigation funds. If a large project comes in and it goes through CEQA and looks at significant impacts in the area, and is looking for ways to mitigate those significant impacts with investments in the area, that conceivably they could use that to fund additional infrastructure in the area to accelerate the development and adoption of zero-emission vehicles in the region. So we're trying to put a cost-effectiveness number on that and figure out what the dollar per ton number would need to be to make it work for the projects, and then also to make it work so that we could actually implement it in a way that we see results locally. So we're just starting to do that. We're starting to look into those, and then once we get something that we can report back with that, we will.
Mr. Mosby.
Probably the most important question I have here, if I'm going to go out and try to sell this to people, is how much does one of this bare bones, as in this picture, station cost? Not counting permitting, not counting anything else, just the bare bone.
$1.5 million. So they're very expensive right now because, as you can see, there's been 50 built in the state. So the parts right now are almost Yeah. So the parts right now are, it's almost custom. Each one's almost custom made. And so that's a big part of the state investment, is to actually help build up the infrastructure of the people who make the station parts, where instead of it being a custom one-off thing, they can get their assembly lines up and get their cost per station down.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem. I mean, you only have a couple of them, and as it becomes more common, and it's just like calculators, they get smaller and cheaper, and it's just it's going to be, and it's the fuel too. Do you have any idea what the fuel cost per gallon or equivalent at this point?
It's sold in kilograms, but they'll tell you in terms of dollars per gallon equivalent. I've heard people say $4 per gallon equivalent, but again, those numbers change really quickly too. And right now, most of the companies that are leasing cars, and that seems to be the big model right now, what they're doing is just included in the lease, the company is covering the cost of the fuel. So that's the other big part of the infrastructure rollout, and that there's a lot of interest both at the state and the national level of figuring that part of the puzzle out of where the fuel comes from, where it gets created.
Yeah, and see, when I drove that car, I think it was back in sometime in the winter last year, it was $12 a gallon is what he was telling me. So that just manufacturing something makes it cheaper.
Yeah.
So as the overhead comes down and the equipment gets paid for and it doesn't all blow up, and the uncertainty cost goes away, then things will get cheaper.
Yeah.
And I think this thing's going to take off.
Yeah, and those numbers. Oh, which vehicles? Oh, so right now, Toyota is leasing a sedan, and Hyundai is leasing a small SUV. Honda is looking to start offering a sedan later this year. I know GM.
Yeah.
GM's got a bunch of vehicles that they, that they kind of have test vehicles, and they've kind of thrown numbers out. Maybe around 2020 they'd start offering those to the public. So there's more companies coming in and starting to offer them. What vehicle was here last year? Oh, what here was last year? That was a Hyundai Santa Fe.
Okay. Yeah. It was really good. Impressive. Anyway,
I was just going to offer, I've been to the LA Car Show the last few years, and they have hydrogen cars on the shore, on the floor,
Mhm.
and they're on the market. They're just not widely sold.
are they outrageously expensive or?
They don't have price tags on them.
Oh, they don't.
Like a
If
lot
you
of
have
those
to
cars.
ask, you can't afford it. Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Richardson.
For electric charging vehicles, several years ago, PG&E, Southern California Edison, and San Diego Power got together to study the best way to implement electric generating facilities for their own power plants and for charging stations. And I would imagine that the hydrogen folks should follow in their footsteps to learn to put these things out so that there'll be acceptable payback.
Mr. Mosby?
I was just going to answer your question about lease. It says Hyundai leases its hydrogen-powered Tucson crossover for $499 a month, $3,000 down.
Hey, I think I can afford that. All right. And then that includes the fuel. Yeah, that's it may because that's exactly what I can't remember the guy's name that took me for a ride, but
Keith Malone with
Malone,
the
right,
California
right.
Fuel Cell Partnership.
yeah, and I wanted to get one at that time, and he recommended against it because he says you don't have a place to fuel yet. So anyway, there you go. All right, so get a motion to receive. Okay, roll call, please. Thank you.
Board Member Richardson? Yes. Wolf? Aye. Farr? Aye. Bennett?
Aye.
Lisalde? Aye. Mosby? Aye. White?
Aye.
Patino? Aye. And Chair Adams.
Aye. And we are now adjourned until May 19th in Santa Maria at 1 p.m. Thank you very much.